Yeah, I don't have their roster in front of me, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Palmetto Panthers came out of that district and that region.
In terms of sleepers, Monarch, Stoneman Douglas, and Jupiter might be teams that might be better than expected in 8A South. I would say Douglas might actually be the best in that group, but I could see any of these three. I don't know if they would beat the top teams in this region, but they might be a team that has a lot better success than most people would be thinking going into the season.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know enough about some of the second-tier teams in 8A to give you any sleepers there. But, look, if I had to mention a sleeper, I'd say keep your eye on, Steinbrenner last year. Really came on there at the end of the season last year. So keep your eye on Steinbrenner.
Yeah, they really did come out of nowhere last year, too.
Yeah.
The only thing with Steinbrenner is I really haven't heard much about what they have going back into this year.
And they're moving up, too. So, they're going from 7A to 8A this year. So, that I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make for them. But, so we'll see.
All right, moving on to 7A. In terms of North Florida, but I really don't have anyone, in particular in the 7A, at least in North Florida, because most of the top teams that I've seen in 7A are either Central or South Florida. But in terms of up in their region, three teams that I saw in 7A North that might be worth keeping an eye on, that might have better than expected seasons, would be Buchholz, First Coast, and Ocala Forest, who I believe has picked up I believe they picked up a 3-star transfer from Westport a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But outside that, 7A North, it's just not that strong in the true north end of the state. But when I get to Central Florida, I see a lot of very good 7A teams. Armwood, Edgewater, Tampa Bay Tech, Manatee, Venice. Central Florida for 7A, very good classification in general. And then...
Yeah, Tampa really sets the table for 7A, in my opinion. You just look, some of the teams you just mentioned. These are all state title contenders in 2020.
For sure. And I've heard good things with both Edgewater and Tampa Bay Tech. They might even be better than they were last year. And they were pretty good last year too. So they're definitely teams to watch. And then in terms of sleepers, I heard a few names, obviously. This one surprised me. Bartow, I've heard good things about them, as well as Kathleen over in Polk County, that they could both be potential teams that will be rising back up. Maybe borderline playoff teams in 7A. Then you got Bloomingdale and Plant City might be worth watching. Then there's also Vieira over in Brevard County that might be worth watching. So in general, 7A in Central Florida, very strong in just across the board.
Yeah, in this region here, you mentioned Vieira. Look, Vieira had some issues this offseason. They lost. Vieira had a quarterback by the name of Bryce Norton last year. He got injured in the opening game against Cocoa and didn't come back until they played Rockledge. But he transferred this year. He moved from Vieira actually over to Rockledge. And Norton was the first quarterback in the state 2 years ago since Tim Tebow to pass or to rush for over 1,000 yards and pass for over 3,000 yards.
Wow.
And so, and last year, obviously, anything that he did last year was going to be a down year. When, getting injured right out of the gate kind of put, curtailed any expectations. But, here in Brevard County, Tony Rao, Florida Gator fans will know that name, Tony Rao. He is the head coach over for the Melbourne Bulldogs. And last year, Melbourne had a great year. Last year, I think that was a young team last season when the Florida Tech Panther D2 football team closed their operations because of COVID-19 a month ago. Melbourne picked up 2 coaches from the staff there. They picked up offensive coordinator Jason Martin, I believe, and also an offensive line coach there as well. So I keep my eye on the Melbourne Bulldogs this year. You know, Melbourne, a very storied tradition as well. They were Brevard County's first state champ back in 1966. So, yeah, you know, Topa, I always have a problem saying the name, but Topa Kaliga up there, you know, that's a new school. They had a good year last year. They didn't make the playoffs. I don't know if that program's building again, but you know, all sleeper teams. Vieira, I you know, maybe a down year this year. I'm not sure. We're going to have to see. They got C.J. Sims coming in at quarterback. They lost the Halsey brothers to transfer. They lost a pretty good offensive or defensive end, Julius Barfield. So they've had a lot of transfer issues this offseason. But if it's one thing that Coach Derek Smith and offensive coordinator Mike DeGore, is another name for Florida Gators fans, can do is get a lot out of just above, I say just above, but above average talent. So, you know, that's going to be a good school. So, yeah, there's some sleepers for sure, and Vieira's definitely in that class, as is Melbourne.
I think we talked about this before, but it does seem like, in general, that Vieira they're just not, that 2015 team seems like a long time ago. It just doesn't seem like they're ever going to really get back to that level of team in the near future.
Well, they ran in the Plant. You know, they keep running in the Plant. And, you know, as we just talked about, you know, those teams come over from Tampa, like Plant. And, I mean, it is, it's a murderer's row, really, of Tampa football teams to get to the playoffs. Now, look. I mean, what led to a lot of these Vieira transfers was there were some obvious issues in the locker room last year. You know, Vieira seems to think that the issues have transferred out. You know, Tampa Tech came over here and really they beat Vieira. They put 52 on Vieira, beat them 52-14. And remember, Vieira came into that as the number 2 seed there. Tampa Tech is coming in as a 10-point underdog in that game. So, and beat them rather easily. In fact, they never finished the game. There was an injury in the middle of the third quarter, and we had already reached the running clock, and head coach, to his credit, Derek Smith, said, "That's it. It's over," because the young man on the field had a neck injury. So they just ended the game. But, yeah, I mean, it'll be tough for Vieira to reach the state championship this year. But I think in return, what we could see from Derek Smith and Mike DeGore and the rest of that staff this year, and they get back to Marcus Manyfield, too, who is an outstanding defensive coach. He coached Cocoa Beach last year, and he returns to the staff of Vieira. What we could see out of those guys this year is their best years coaching. So I wouldn't take my eye off them.
Also, that Tampa team also went out there and took Lakeland to the limit the next round, too. And Lakeland they went into the season ranked number 1 in the state.
Yeah. Yep. That was a tough Tampa Bay Tech team, and I'll tell you what, I'm not sure. I was told by their coaching staff last year that the reason, you know, they had lost 2 in a row earlier last season. And the reason that they had lost 2 in a row was because they had made some internal suspensions of some players. Coming back off of those suspensions, you know, that was a team that just started. Well, I was told, and after what I saw and after what they did to Lakeland, obviously believed it, but I was told that had they not, you know, lost those players for those 2 games, they would have had an undefeated season.
All right. In terms of 7-8 teams in the South, it really starts and pretty much ends with St. Thomas Aquinas, who will likely be number 1 preseason across the board for Florida and is the favorite to repeat in 7A. Other teams in that area might be worth watching would be Atlantic Delray, Plantation, or Miramar potentially. And I guess sleepers I would say Ely, I could see having a decent season. They finally stopped overscheduling, and I think they can probably get themselves to at least 500, maybe a little bit better than that. And Seminole Ridge, they are a bit off the radar a bit, but solid coaching over there, and could be one of the better teams in Palm Beach County this year.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. And I think, at least according to Max Prep, I'm looking at St. Thomas's schedule this year, and right now, I only see 2 teams on it. Now, I don't know if that's because there's things that need to be done or completed or finished, but I only see South Plantation and Western on the schedule.
They lost 2 out-of-state games. They had Dugganville, which they were supposed to play up in Cannon. That event got canceled, so they lost that one. And I believe McEachern was supposed to be on the schedule, but that one got canceled. So I'm thinking they're probably having to, if they have a schedule right now, I don't know if they filled those openings, but I have to think they probably have been looking for replacement games to fill those games.
They got, I'm excited to see Dallas Turner this year play for St. Thomas. I think he's still undecided. Number 2 or 3 defensive end in the country. They've got some great players again. Once again, returning Tyreek Sapp, another defensive end. So they've got bookend defensive ends. Sapp is committed to Florida. But you're right. And when you say that it starts and it ends with St. Thomas, it most certainly does. Braylon Brown, wide receiver, committed to Ole Miss. And the list goes on and on and on for Coach Roger Harriet.
Obviously it ends with them, and I guess that will end with 7A there. 6A, with 6A North, I was Scambia. I've heard they won't have the same level team they did last year, but they should be solid. Columbia, my home school, I suppose, we'll go with that. Obviously, graduating 3 different 3-star players with Jordan Smith, Marquez Bell, and Levante Camille. Obviously, you could look at the quarterback situation right there, having to lose a player that was the career passing leader in Columbia history. It's definitely going to be a bit of an adjustment for them. However, I do see quite a bit of talent in this 21 class, even if it's not really necessarily considered high-level talent when it comes to like 24/7 and all those other rating sites. But there is some very good players on this team. I could see them being a threat, and that combined with the fact that 6A North seems to be heading for a down year this year, if of course we get a season, and especially the district. Middleburg will be down, obviously. Gainesville, they had to bring in a new coach after a 2-8 season last year. They're only going to be able to get so much better from that. And Lee's been losing players, seems left and right, to transfers.
Yeah, that's shocking. I don't know what's going on at Lee, but, look, a couple of years ago, Lee handed at the time, was the 4A state champ. I'm sorry, the name eludes me, of the team, but had handed them their only loss of the year.
Reigns.
2 short years. Yeah, Reigns. Yeah, they were the only team that beaten Reigns a couple of years ago. So I'm not sure what's happened there or why they continue to lose players, but you're absolutely right. They do, and they're losing some quality talent.
Yeah, from what I did notice, and we'll probably get more into this topic a little bit once we get to the 5A North, because there's quite a few Jacksonville teams on that list. It just feels like, in general right now, the teams in Jacksonville, all the talent is getting so spread out that you're going to have a bunch of solid teams, but you're not really going to have that one team that is going to be a significant threat to go win a state title, at least when it comes to the public schools. But also, back to, with Columbia, I mentioned before about the schedule. From the games that I've already seen, Week 1, hosting Tampa Bay Tech. Week 2, hosting Oakleaf. Week 3, traveling to Valdosta. Week 5, traveling to Trinity Christian. Then they come back. They have Madison County at home later on in the season. Then they have Lee at home later on in the season. They traveled to North Marion the last game of the season. So there's going to be a lot of games right